Hi, everyone. I wanted to do a quick follow up, well, as quick as it can be. We have about a half an hour to talk to Susan about a very important tribunal that happened today. And it's a follow up to a conversation we had last year, I believe, right, Susan?
Yeah.
Yeah, about your mother. So I wanted to just, I was in that tribunal with you and quite a few people. And I have probably a million thoughts. We're going to try to limit it to as much as we can cover it in a rather condensed talk. But I thought it was important that we had this conversation and at least let people know where we're at. So, Susan, if you want to just give everyone who doesn't know who you are just a quick lay of the land in relation to this case.
Yeah. So my name is Susan Steels. I'm a registered social worker. And back in 2021, my mother was evicted from a long-term care home, Loch Lomond Villa in St. John, New Brunswick, for, quote, lack of trust in our care and organization. After that happened, we tried really hard to advocate to bring the nursing home operator that had given my mom that order. We tried really hard to get her to communicate in the best interest of my mom, and she just refused. She refused. So we put in a college complaint. The college complaint found that there was merit in more than 300 pages of documents and testimony. They made that decision, and it's been almost 5 years since mom died, and we had the hearing, the disciplinary hearing today.
So your mom was admitted to the home during COVID-19 or before?
Just before, yeah, before COVID-19.
And it was about a year in, right? I believe that she was
Yeah,
evicted
so
or discharged, however you
yes.
say it.
So my mom was, yeah, forcibly discharged. It was about 8 months after they put the pandemic visitation restrictions on.
Yeah, so this is arguably probably the worst time for families in long-term care. In
Awful.
is long of a history as most long-term care families I know can remember.
Yeah.
And this, I believe, at that time we were still in heavy caseloads and high mortality.
Yeah, it was awful, and there had been no COVID in my mom's home, but there was severe visitation restrictions.
Yep.
Yeah, so when they opened the home and we went in, we found that my mother had lost 25% of her body weight. She had gone from walking with a walker to being restrained in a wheelchair. She had a pressure ulcer. Her call bell was broken. Um, Her TV had been cut off and put in another man's name. Uh, it was her SSRIs had been tripled, like her medications had
Oh
been
my
changed.
gosh.
Like, so we were just shocked, and she looked like she was dying. Like, we just, like, it wasn't the same mother that we saw before the doors opened. So, like any family would do, we started to ask for questions. We wanted to monitor her weight. So we became like very vigilant around trying to make sure we had good communication with the nursing home. And then my mom, she just really seemed like she was getting worse and worse. Um, so then we sent an email to the charge nurse asking her. We documented what we'd like to discuss, like, because we worked in healthcare, my sisters were nurses. We thought, well, we'll put it in a clinical way so we can make our time really targeted. And then after we sent that email, the CEO responded and said, since you don't like your mother, since you don't like her visitation, you can take your mother home. And then my sister said, and my sister was terminally ill and having cancer
Oh my
treatment,
God.
and it was awful. And so my sister said, well, what do you mean? Because it just was out of the blue, it was shocking.
Yeah.
And so she didn't respond. And then a couple of business days later, we got a formal letter by registered mail saying, due to the lack of trust in our care and our organization, your mother's being discharged in 15 days.
Which is
And
so
it
extreme.
was
It is so
awful.
extreme. Where is the opportunity for the middle ground? Where is the
Right,
opportunity to have a dialogue and actually get on the same page when it comes
right.
to an appropriate care plan?
Yeah, there was no dialogue. And she said, and she ordered all communication through the Loch Lomond Villa lawyer. So we couldn't talk to anybody anymore. And we could only talk through that lawyer. And I mean, so we didn't know what to do. So we got a found a lawyer. It took us like 5 days to find a lawyer in a small town. And so we got this lawyer, and we said to him, we sent their lawyer a letter saying she bypassed standards. Like, she didn't even give us a warning. Like, we need to sit down and work out in the best interest of our mother. And he sent us a letter back saying, well, they could do it for any reason because of the legislation. And since you said lack of trust, this is what I think, this is what lack of trust is. And he wrote these like crazy things, like we threatened the military and we insulted the doctor by asking her for her credentials, and we were condescending, and it was just, it was bizarre.
I mean, the whole situation to me is mind blowing. Like, I just keep thinking about, this is every family's nightmare. You entrust your loved one into these operators, these facilities, whatever it be, a hospital, a long-term care home. And at that time, a lot of these seniors were not safe. Like, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
And families were entirely right to be concerned and to ask questions, and were frankly traumatized themselves by being locked out and not knowing what was happening to their loved ones. So if all they could do was ask questions, of course they're going to ask questions. And it just is mind-blowing to me that the response would be, well, you clearly don't trust us, so go find somewhere else to live. During a global pandemic, where scores of seniors are dying, and this is the population hit hardest, and long-term care is in complete disarray at this time. And suddenly you're supposed to, when you're not even allowed, apparently you're supposed to go find another long-term care home, which is not an easy thing to do, because most people are on the wait list for years for long-term care homes because there's capacity issues across Canada. So the whole situation is so mind-blowing. And when I found myself listening to, the other side's legal counsel today, I was just really, really not only upset, but territorial for you. Because when I was listening to the way that the family was being characterized, I mean, certain terms that were repeated, saying things like, and I took quite a few pages of notes here. So let me look through my notes because I'm a note taker. Things that just like that you were, what was it? You were orchestrating where was it?
I think he said that. Yeah. So today was the disciplinary hearing that we had been waiting for like 4 years for.
Yeah.
And so,
consistently confrontational. Staff felt intimidated by the sisters and lawyer, but the lawyer that you made them get because you wouldn't talk to them.
Right.
Which is, they didn't want to. No family wants to have to get a lawyer. We just want to be able to talk and find a middle ground and make sure that we're all working on the same team for the loved one that is the one in the recipient of this care. So and
they made it sound like we had this lawyer on retainer or some kind of a lawyer and we didn't get a lawyer until after we could only communicate through their lawyer. So it was like they kept making stuff up. And what disturbed me so much is the Nurses Association of New Brunswick, which is the regulatory body to protect the public, took that information as factual. They allowed them to enter that information as factual.
Without allowing you to have your say.
Right, with no cross-examination, of it. I mean, I expected that they were going to attack us because that's what they've done all along. She had nothing else to go on but except to say that we're horrible people. But we were only horrible people after we said, you didn't follow the rules, you didn't follow the standards, and we want to sit down and work something out. Then all of a sudden, she just had a story that just kept growing and growing. Like, it was like her story became so wild, but there was not even an incident report. And the Nurses Association of New Brunswick allowed them to not, like, they didn't challenge them on that. And that was so disturbing. So who are they protecting?
I think it's really troubling when you have situations like this where, at various cases today, you would hear lawyers try to take away from the nurses' regulatory oversight to say, no, the long-term care legislation, you must defer to that instead. And per that, the CEO or an operator and all the terminology around that and all the wording technicalities. And it just felt like at no point could anybody just stop and kind of stand back and go, look, what is happening here? We had only just spoken to this family and tried to hear one another and find a resolution. And instead now we're hearing, and I hear the lawyers talk about several times how they hired PR companies to give them advice and marketing companies. All of this money that the long-term care provider is spending for what? That money could go to the care that we know these residents so desperately need across the sector writ large. And instead we have long-term care companies in receipt of public funds using money towards PR companies and marketing companies to help them have a strategy against difficult family members or family members that are the words in quotations that I had written at one point, directly created a controversy. Apparently you speaking to the media was directly creating a controversy.
Well, so and that was
not allowed to speak.
Right. And that was interesting. I so much of what they said, it was like they created this other side story. It was like they created this, everything was not what it appeared to be. And the truth about the media is that we did not want to go to the media. It was the last thing we wanted to do. And what really pushed us to accept that is when someone in the Minister of Health's office said, if it was my mom, I'd go to the media. And I was like, oh, okay. So if it was his mom, he'd go to the media. Well, then if that's the best thing we could do, then I guess we have to do that. And that was only 2 days. It wasn't like there was this PR campaign. And we had to keep talking to the media. And the reason we kept talking to the media was, first of all, the public was outraged. Mm-hmm. So for the Nurses Association to not understand how outraged the public was, is just they're tone deaf. So that's why the media kept asking us to meet with them, because the public wanted to know what was going on in long-term care. So that's why we kept. And the other thing is, after she put that letter out saying that we were a safety risk, we had to protect our own integrity. You can't just let people say those horrible things about your family and not say it. You got to stand up to bullies. You just got to do it. And that's what we did.
And I just think, unfortunately, with these cases taking so long to actually get to this stage, right, of resolution, it's there's almost this inertia or forgetfulness about what that time was like. And at some points during today's tribunal, there would be references to cases and case law from before the pandemic. And I'm thinking to myself, that is entirely irrelevant. You cannot compare the 2021, literally 2020 and 2021 were arguably the worst, year and year and a half into the pandemic. I mean, I remember what that was like, because I was speaking to all the families I was there paying attention every day. But I wonder, were these people actually cognizant of what was happening at this time? This was the story on every news. Every day there was a different long-term care story. Families had to go to the public because they often weren't hearing from the facilities and the operators. They were being stonewalled many times. Yeah. So they didn't. Who thinks a family wants to go to the media? That's the last thing family are terrified of retribution and retaliation. And frankly, seeing what happened to you, you are evidence for why families are fearful
100%.
of reprisal and retaliation, because you tried. And, in my correspondences with you, and you're a lovely lady, I can't ever imagine a world where you are threatening or scary or rude. You have been nothing but lovely for the years that I've known you. So it's not and I don't make an effort to get very protective over people that I think are troublesome or problematic. I know you're a good person, and your family are good people. And to see you go through this and hear the way your family was being mischaracterized without even an opportunity to have a voice today was really upsetting. I mean, I did take solace in the fact that at least, there was a recognition that this person did violate professional misconduct in one of the allegations. So that to me is, and the lawyer was very clear for the nurses side that was, it was
Yeah, I thought,
professional behavior.
yeah, and one thing that stood out so much for me is that they really took a lot of effort to not recognize that we were talking about a frail 85-pound, 83-year-old demented woman who had total care, and they really took and a power of attorney that was terminally ill, as well as a nurse. So she knew that what she did
Awful.
was wrong. It was awful, and they never allowed any of that to be entered as factual information, which I believe the panel should have heard in order to make the proper decision. So they created a book of documents, or a book of facts that were guided the panel to make the decisions that they made. And even after they found her guilty of professional misconduct with confidentiality, which is a very serious thing in healthcare, that wasn't good enough for her. It wasn't good enough. They were just, now how do we get out of this one? No.
Well, I think it was important. They did make some very good points there that I think, the public, would be interested in probably knowing that, it doesn't matter. And they were, there was this argument that because you spoke to the media, that should waive any rights to privacy. But the nurses side of it were very clear, and the lawyer to say, that no, that implied consent, or implied privacy, that does not hold to the nurse. The nurse cannot go out and make public posts or public comments about anyone in their care, right? And
right.
And then there was the whole separate conversation of, well, she was the CEO, she wasn't the one providing the frontline care, but that, they also made the counterclaim that no, nurses work in many different facilities and in many different capacities, and it's not just narrow in the provision of they have to be providing that frontline care. And I think that was a good point that
they made that as a separate legal argument to try to persuade the panel on that one allegation, but then they brought up the email, or it was an email where she documented all of her clinical findings that she thought that from her frontline work. Like she said, I assessed your mother.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, she said, I assessed your mother. And when she signed off in the clinical chart, when she did sign on the clinical chart, she put RN behind it. So when it worked for them, they used that. And so the Nurses Association's legal counsel never pointed out that contradiction. So I felt that, she had an opportunity to point that out, but she didn't. So
it would have been good if the family had a chance to talk, right?
It would have been. And in that letter that they had in their hands, it said all further communication would go through the Loch Lomond Villa lawyer. The Nurses Association lawyer never pointed that out to the panel, that the breakdown of communication was because she set up a communication strategy that caused the breakdown in communication. So they never actually teased that out as well for the panel, and there was no cross-examination.
So as it stands right now, and I know, we do need to definitely have a follow-up talk to really get into more of the nitty-gritty, but they had made this decision. We were, this started at 9 a.m. today, and we just got the decision at 3 o'clock. So we were all day on and on this Zoom call. Yeah. There was a break for lunch. There was was it a lunch break or a decision break? It was a decision break, right?
Decision break.
Yeah, it was a decision. Yeah. So 2 for 1, right? Two birds. So this has been a full day procedure. And at the end, it was that they found 2 of the 3 allegations. They upheld 1 as being professional misconduct. And they are now still in the process of determining what they gave a penalty, but then the, lawyers for the nurse in question that you raised the complaint for, are, saying that it should, a letter of guidance was the term they were using, that should be more than enough. She has felt from this. She has been, permanently and significantly impacted. And I just kept thinking, why are we not hearing at all from the family who has been significantly and permanently impacted, that had to get a lawyer, that had to go through this nightmare, and now doesn't have their mother? They
would not allow the victim's voice to be entered into the proceeding.
I don't know if that's normal for these kinds of tribunals. This is not, I don't know, but this was my first such, nursing tribunal to attend. But it definitely felt like, that there was that oversight, that I think there would have been a more holistic, obviously, accounting of the situation if both sides were to have their opportunity. And
the other thing with the Nurses Association of New Brunswick is it's the only regulatory body, nurses body in Canada, that has a dual. It's run by its members. So in colleges, we have a separate board that has a broader or larger public representation that gives oversight, because you have nurses regulating nurses. Yeah. So in order to kind of smooth out the bias or deal with the built-in bias, you have public oversight. So they've said they've changed their name to college, but they haven't changed their board. So they're still the same players at the table. So you've got a nurses association whose job it is to lobby for nurses and, have social clubs and stuff like that, which is good, but they're the ones that are running the regulatory body. So they have a legal responsibility to the public, but they're structured as to include their association. They say they're changing that, but they haven't changed their board yet. So it's messy. It's very messy.
Now, this is one layer of accountability that families can pursue, right? They can, in the cases of nurses who have an oversight regulatory body, they can go through this procedure. Oh. But is there anything else that you can do? Have you thought about, as they were kind of alluding to, that the operator is separate from the CEO?
Yeah, they really like to. Lawyers really like to steer you towards the
more lawyers.
More lawyers. They really love to. And when as a family, when you are steered towards that, then you get into their core. You get into their world. So you lose. Like if we had gone through the courts, it would have been hard to go through the. It would have been hard to have this professional tribunal as well, because you get, that's confidential, that's towards the courts. But we had legal advice. So this is why we took the route that we took. And we did the best we could, but unfortunately, we were only successful. We were successful. You know what? I am not going to cry over something that didn't happen. I am going to celebrate what did happen. And if she had to be held accountable for what she did, even if she didn't get the most punishment she should have got, she was found guilty of professional misconduct on one of the counts, and breach of confidentiality is a big deal in health. And they can talk all they want about how it's not a big deal, but if you're a nurse or if you're like me, a social worker, it's a big deal. And so I have to kind of use selling. The other thing is, I feel like there were other families on that call that she had evicted before.
I saw some comments that other families wanted to speak to media, and it was funny because I tried to. One of the families was asking if there was any media on the line, and I jumped in and put a comment because I could see someone was there, and I gave the information. And then, funny enough, not long after, the chat was disabled, and even the lawyer mentioned my comment, which I thought was interesting.
It was
like the chat being disabled, and then we couldn't even communicate with other people in the tribunal. We hadn't been up until that point when I, heaven forbid, put the contact of a media person
Yeah.
that was on the call, right? So it
Yeah.
wasn't like I saw the person, I was helping this person on the call who couldn't look at all the different who knows what uh, situation if they weren't very tech savvy. I was just trying to assist, but either way, it was
Yeah,
very
no, it
interesting
was,
to see that
yeah,
not
so
long
I know of at least two people that were on it, and they were hoping to have finally some justice, for like long overdue justice on their part. And so I feel sad that they weren't able to get that, but at the same time, I think that just knowing that she had to go through this and she had to
after.
defend her practice was, hopefully they'll feel some sense of peace and comfort. So, that's
Listen,
all we
I
can
think what
do.
you all did was very brave, and I mean,
Mhm.
listen, not for nothing. There is a record of this now, and whatever what was the term again? A controversy, apparently, that you
Oh,
created. But bottom line, there is a record of this now, and I think that is
mhm.
so vital because not for nothing. Just a couple weeks ago, on January 27th, what came all over the news? If people in my community of long-term care remember this, 12 victims of sexual offenses at a nursing home. Well, guess what? It's the same nursing home. So I think it is very important when you see a pattern of behavior that is troubling, and we have families speaking up, and we have these cases proceeding. Now we have police investigating this home and multiple sexual assaults. Okay. Um, which is horrifying. And police don't often get involved in these circumstances. They tend to, we don't often hear cases of police laying charges. But this is obviously a massive, I don't think, apart from, the Wettlaufer murders, I don't remember such an atrocious case of mass assault, and particularly sexual assault, right? Of these elderly patients that are
Yeah, it's
residents that are
awful.
living in these homes. So I think what you did, it was tough, and you probably was not easy for you to be in that call and hear the way you were characterized. I was angry for you. I just knowing you as a friend. I can't even imagine what it
Mhm.
felt hearing that as the person being spoken about and not having a chance to defend yourself or provide the actual full accounting of the situation, right? And but what you did was so important, and I think it was so brave, and
Thank
I,
you.
you know what I mean? Like, thank you for doing that. And you at least started this awareness of issues at this home, which clearly is plagued by issues.
Yeah.
The most egregious just being released in the news, but
Well, you never know, because if you're going to get evicted for, speaking up, and if you're going to get characterized as, horrible people, if you go to the media, then most people would just be quiet. And they
of
don't,
course,
and that's what we're seeing. People don't want to jeopardize their, they don't, it's a lot of work to speak up, and it's a lot
it
of
is.
risk. And, I took that risk because I felt like I couldn't not take that
Yeah.
risk. Like,
No,
it
I
was
would too.
not something I could not sleep with I
No.
couldn't go to bed at night knowing that I was too scared of a couple of lawyers to tell the truth.
No, you're very, very
Mm,
brave, and your family is wonderful. And I'm
thank
sorry,
you.
I'm really sorry you went through all this, but there was some vindication today. And I don't think this is the end of it. And that home, really, you should probably stand back and ask yourselves, why do we need to hire PR companies and marketing strategies to improve the way we look? If you have to do that, maybe you should spend that money on actually addressing the root causes that are causing you to feel like you have to get ahead of it from a PR perspective. I mean, I think at some point you would hope that these people involved kind of give their heads a shake and go, what are we doing here? Like,
Yeah,
what are we doing? It's not an us
yeah.
versus them. We should be all on the same team. We should be working
Exactly.
together. And I really hope, and this case, yes, it went on for years, but it was important. And what you did by having this in the record is vitally important for this sector. And I think it will set a precedent. I think it's very important. So I know it was hard for you today and your family to relive all this and be constantly re-traumatized. But just know that you have a whole support system behind you. I support you. I know my whole long-term care family, all of us, right? The whole long-term care community, we all support you.
Thank
And
you.
we just want to make sure that our loved ones are safe,
Thank you.
right? So please don't forget that. And I promise we will come back and do a longer talk. But I know
Okay.
you have media that are knocking at your door too, and you
Yeah.
need to keep doing these interviews because it's important that people are aware of the risks, and just aware of what they're unfortunately getting themselves into with some facilities, and to be prepared. And even if you do all the right things, you might encounter a situation like this, and all you can do is stand your ground, stand on the right side of things, and defend your loved ones. That's it, right? And you did everything you had to do. And I hope you have some time to rest tonight. Be kind to yourself, because you all went through a lot and you deserve a break, right? So please take some time to rest, and know that we are all in your corner, and we will come back, everyone at home, because I want to do an extended talk also for my students to meet you too.
I love that.
We would love you. But to everyone else at home, I'm going to wrap this up. And if you have questions and if you want to talk to Susan, or if any media people want to talk to Susan, you can obviously either connect through me. I can give you her info, or you can directly contact Susan. She's on X, she's on LinkedIn.
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky, yes. And please don't hesitate, and always speak up. And Susan, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
Stay on the line. We're going to talk. Everyone else, thanks for tuning in. And if I could figure out how to actually stop a recording, after all the times I do this, okay, let me see. I got this. I think I got this. I got this.